With Tesla's announcement of the reveal of Robotaxi on August 8th and Elon's comment that they'll go all out in autonomy, the rate of progress for full self-driving is now more important than ever. Today, let's review the state of FSD and let's dive deeper into the potential Robotaxi business. The disconnect between the state of the business and the stock is greater than ever. So we have Sat joining us. Sat is an early investor since 2012, and he's attended every single annual shareholder meeting. He's been following Tesla so closely. Thank you so much, Sat, for joining me.
Hi, Herbert. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. So your background in following the business for so long, you're a long-term Tesla investor. What's your opinion on this disconnect between the stock that's continuing to fall and yet the business is just getting better over time?
Yeah, the disconnect happens a lot because you're not going to have all these continuous numbers that's going up and right. That's what the ideal thing is, right? Like any startup that pitches anything, they have an ideal 5-year graph that pitches to the right and never goes down, right? That's what we want to project. That's what we want to operate our business as. And unfortunately, numbers or circumstances doesn't enable that to happen because the stock price is not contingent only on the business. Right? So how people perceive it, how they feel about it. And it's the cycle that Tesla has gone through many, many times. I've been following Tesla since 2006. The business was much different then, but the progress it's made is tremendous. And you see this part where it jumps 1 year like crazy, and then it flattens or stays down or goes down for the next few years. And then when the transition, like when you see that underlying part of the business, you see like they've made a transition from one platform to the next. And it takes a while for that to come to fruition in terms of the numbers appearing on your financials. And usually a jump occurs when it's least expected. So if everyone already expects it, then it's like, oh yeah, it was already there. So there's also elements where you're not really expecting certain things or certain numbers. And you see it with the other tech companies, it happens all the time. So just that Tesla is under a microscope. Ironically, the other OEMs don't get the same treatment, and they get interpreted otherwise. So that's what's really weird to me. That, I mean, Tesla's in one of the best positions it can be in terms of business. Q1 has naturally been a low deliveries, sales period for auto, just the industry forever. So it's not awkward or weird or that it went down in Q1, but it's always made progress every single quarter. Now it's profitable consecutively for a few years now. So the progress is there. I've traveled and I've seen more Teslas in different countries. So I see the progress making going forward, and yet the stock is diving the exact opposite direction. So I think it's actually a buying opportunity rather than seeing it's, people have this doom and gloom kind of feel. I think it's like after the opposite, because it's always happened. Every time it went down, it was actually the time, an opportunity to buy it. So the stock is actually tremendously up if you look at 5 years. If you're looking at 1 or 2 or 3 years, then yeah, you can make the argument that there's other stocks that would have done better. But we're in the long-term business. We're not looking at 1 year, 1 quarter. So you have to look at the overall business to see that.
So you and I have invested in Tesla since 2012, and then we saw a jump 3x by 2013. Primarily, like you told me before, the reason you invested in Tesla was when you saw that they were actually investing in a factory, and you knew that they were going to make this happen. And that's what happened in 2013. People started realizing this was not just a small little startup. They're actually heading towards mass production. And then we waited and saw it flat for many years, growing up, sometimes ups and downs. And then it popped, and then it was flat, then it popped, and then now it's flat for 3 years. Any advice in terms of like, when do you start feeling like it's going to pop? What needs to happen? Because for many years, there's negativity. There's no belief in what the story is. People are confused what this company is about. And then all of a sudden it pops. The last one, it did it because all of a sudden, first of all, we're a risk-on environment. Lots of money was flowing. And secondly, they made it through the Model 3. They knew that this was now going to be very successful instead of it died. What do you think what's going to change the narrative at this point?
I think it's always something that's least expected or some minor part. Like Tesla Energy is building up really quite a bit, but the company is so big now, the material impact seems so minimal. But when you look at it by itself, it's done tremendous growth. And then the other part of like, it's not just the fact that the first part you mentioned was the Model S program, but in 18 months since they did the initial production, they reached 25.2% of gross margin, positive gross margin. That's insane, right? It's not just the fact that they're making low numbers and they're able to produce it. They were able to volume production and then make it into gross margin that's unprecedented in the auto industry. And even now, yeah, it's tapered a little bit down because you're doing many, many more. You're doing 2 million run rate as opposed to 20, 25K, 50K cars per year. So it's a huge difference there. And yet they still have industry leading gross margins. And yet you see all the other OEMs, they still cannot break even. Like even after 2-3 years, they still can't break even. So it's not even just about like, hey, the stock does a disconnection, and then you see another platformer coming up because Tesla announces it. They actually execute on what they say. And other OEMs have said countless for the last 5 years, 6 years I've tracked it. They've announced 12 new models, 40 new models on a concept, prototype car, whatever they make, or marketing tools that they use to show it, but they actually never come to fruition. Almost all of them have not failed to bring it to fruition. It hasn't executed on it. So, and yet they don't get punished the way that Tesla is getting punished. They should be like going way down, and yet they don't. In fact, it goes up every so often because they cut down the EV program. So it doesn't make a lot of sense in terms of long-term prospects, but they like the numbers in short term, and that's why you have this discrepancy that's happening, because Tesla right now has another platform that they're going to go into. They made the Cybertruck, that's another platform, but it's not as big as the Model Y program. So they're anticipating, it's not as big as that, therefore, our expectation isn't as good. So the stock side of the market is seeing it like that, and it's not going to be so big, then they don't expect much. But it's still a materially impactful platform. It's just that it's not big enough and it's not surprising enough yet for that platform. So everyone's looking at the Robotaxi and then the compact car, which surely will be. It's just that it takes time to get to. We can't get there fast enough. That's the thing. So everyone's waiting for that part. But unfortunately, you're going to have the bumps in the middle of it. And that was the case from 2013 to 2019. You could have arguably said you could have just bought it in 2019 at a certain point and you'll have been ahead in terms of the cost basis versus 2014. You could have said that. But but it's really hard to do that when everyone's so negative and saying, it's going to go bankrupt, it's going to go bankrupt. The Model 3 program is going to go bankrupt, right? Now it's just like, they're never going to make the Robotaxi. Like whatever the criticism is, it's always some kind of new criticism, but it's really unfounded considering their track record. And yeah, their timeline is not going to be perfect because they're doing something that nobody else is doing. Who's saying that they're going to do a Robotaxi? Nobody's saying it. And even the companies that have the Robotaxi don't project it and then announce it publicly to have a deadline. So you have Waymo going on 13, 14 years. They never publicly announce, hey, we're going to have this perfected at this time. They never say that because they don't know. So I think Tesla is actually trying to hold themselves more accountable by making these deadlines. Yeah, certain ones you don't meet, of course, because you're pioneering the industry. And that's the norm. In any industry that's pioneering something, yeah, you're going to tell me that they're not going to ever miss any of the deadlines that you try to make. Of course they're going to miss some of it. But look at their business now. They're positive gains. It's like they're profitable. Every quarter they're positive. They're growing slowly but surely, and navigating the crazy economy right now. So I don't know anybody that's adapting and doing a better job than Tesla is.
Yeah. So you were saying earlier that you would need to see something surprise that the investors haven't expected before the stock and the narrative can change quickly. Right now, everybody's expecting earnings are down. The argument against what you just said is that the PE ratio was too high. The expectation of growth was too high based on what they're expecting to happen this year and maybe even next year. And so now their stock going down. People aren't buying the FSD story, which we'll talk about shortly. What are the kinds of shock, kind of surprise that could then jolt everything? Like, do you think that there might be a partnership announced for FSD?
I mean, that's always going to be in the works. Any of the programs that they feel confident enough that they can outsource to help the advancement of sustainable transport, they would surely do. So I think that's always going to be part of the on the cards on the table for that to happen. We just don't know when, right? So it's just those kind of stuff is on the table. They haven't, they'll never say it until it actually going to happen. No, they've made a contract with someone, a collaboration, but it makes sense. It would make sense to, license it out. So there's the app store for the car that's, not open to third parties yet. So there's plenty of other opportunities that are there. That's not a main focus, and people just write off. And it's happened so many times. It's just that I don't think it's happened in one company with so many businesses that's a potential of becoming something more. And they have to choose what to do first as efficiently as possible. And famously, Elon said back in the day when they were starting the supercharger network to spend as much as possible, but don't be wasteful. So that's part of the cost savings and the restructuring they do periodically, and even the mentality that how they go about efficiently use their capital. And at least in the auto industry, I think they're one of the best in terms of the capital efficiencies.
Yep. Okay, so let's talk about FSD. So now people are saying, now that Tesla has said that we're going to start, going balls to the walls, we're going to do everything we can, go as hard as we can to make sure autonomy works. He's laid out 8.8 as a target for revealing the Robotaxi. Everybody's starting to now focus on FSD progress. Is there a way to measure the progress of FSD? So I want to share this first, which is a person named EdgeCase411. And he has a great X account at EdgeCase411. And this is his own analysis, his own user himself. But he's been tracking it since 10.69. And he has this list of features, I guess, or capabilities for comfort, common safety critical, less frequent safety critical, and then follow the law. And then he has Robotaxi specific and miscellaneous. So if you look at this, you can see the improvement since 10.69 to now 12.3. And it's a ranking between 0 to or 1 to 10. And also not available, not something he's been able to test or something. So you can see that, smooth right turns, smooth hairpin turns, a lot of things have turned blue and green in terms of comfort. But in terms of common safety critical, it looks like it's mostly addressing everything fairly well. But it's in the less frequent safety critical where you see a lot of ones and not available. So, can it stop at a school bus? Can it navigate through construction zone? Or traffic cop hand signal navigation, which it's like we've seen mixed signals here. I've seen some videos where they can actually recognize traffic cop signals, and then a school bus, or avoiding debris on the road, and then understanding special road signs, pull over for emergency vehicles, proper behavior at red flashing lights. Again, these are things that I've seen other people say that they've found solved. Reverse, we know that that's not available yet, but it's coming in the next couple releases. Parking still gives it a 4 when it's actually much better now, I think. Avoiding potholes. I just saw today a scenario where the car was able to recognize a pothole and avoid it. Avoiding coasting in blind spots. So this is his list. What's your thoughts on kind of like how far ahead, what has the progress of FSD, and how can we measure to see if it's really truly progressing? Because it needs to progress significantly in order to get to a Robotaxi ready.
Yeah, right now the rate, I think when it jumped to V12 has been tremendous, and to 12.3, it's been a huge jump. I've seen a huge jump, at least in my driving. So I think the only way we could track it is someone, posting videos and doing certain drives that are similar or the same parts to keep a track of it, basically. But and then it's edge case makes sense why its name's edge case, because there's certain cases that's going to be particular to those driving in those areas. You're not going to have, for example, in LA, you're not going to have roundabouts. So certain other places will have roundabouts. So there's certain things that they have to tackle on so many different levels. So everyone's contributing to that by doing that. And my experience has been significantly improved from V12, even just from V12 to V12.3, 3, and even 3.4. So for me, the construction area that I always pass through, they always have some different configuration. I've seen progress from that. So I think overall, when people start posting and talking about it and showing that, we can see that progress is a lot more, and the rate is getting there. Yeah, it's not perfect by any means, but I can't see myself not driving without the FSD. And other people who normally did not like FSD at all don't notice it, or they're kept accepting of it. Like they're surprised with the drive. So I've seen a lot of progress in that sense.
Yeah, I agree with you. So I personally myself have been a complete convert. I've been doing beta testing since 2-3 years ago. I was one of the first 2,000 people that was beta testing this, and I didn't like it. Of course, I would test it to see. I was impressed, but it had many issues, so I wouldn't drive it very often. When 12.3 came out, I started driving this all the time now because it's doing incredible, very little disengagements. So we know that it has a step change. We know that spouses are now enjoying it, even my own spouse now. So we really have broke through a ceiling that we have, but it's still very, very far away. And so let's take a look at kind of how to evaluate what it needs to do. One way is looking at the list of common disengagements in interventions at FSD. Common means it happens at the same location or situation more than once. Are there others that you're experiencing you would add to the list? So this is, again, just one person, edge case, but he does such a, really detailed drives. His disengagements: wrong lane at the intersection, missing turns, stranded in the middle of an intersection during an unprotected left turn, going to bus lanes, cutting turns too sharply. Interventions: incorrect auto speed setting, usually driving below the speed limit, stuck at flashing red lights, stuck on right turns on red. Again, those things seem to be solved, but maybe not quite, not regularly, just occasionally. Does not follow through on forward-facing unprotected left turns and waiting behind a lead car. Comfort critiques. So these are the things his list. Some dips not detected. So that's a good list. And then I'd like to share this. This is one post that he did. Shows you how it's no longer just about doing the unprotected left turn that it's now able to do. Previously couldn't, but even more nuanced at that. Here's an example of one. I thought this was to be fun.
All right, what do we have here? We're making a left turn, unprotected. We gotta wait for this opposing traffic to clear. It's a little backed up, so it's gonna be a little tricky. Let's play it. All right, so we got the blue car to stop for us. Look, FSD is about to go. It started going, but it changed its mind because the other cars didn't let us in. So now we gotta wait again. So all the cars are moving. 2 cars have stopped. Now the gray car is the last one. So the gray car stopped, but now we got the guy making a left turn here in the white car. He took the right of way, so we have to wait. But we gotta go. We gotta start going right now. You gotta go. It's not moving. We're not moving, so I gotta press the accelerator.
You have to press
It's
accelerator.
not really working, so then I gotta disengage.
Okay, so he
And
disengaged.
basically, we gotta push this guy out of the way. I gotta be assertive. He's like, buddy, move it. We got places to go. We gotta wake him up. And look, as soon as we approach him, he moves out of the way, and then we can proceed. So FSD's gotta learn.
It's a lot of nuances still for it to learn. What's your thoughts on that clip?
Yeah, I mean, when it's that busy, you have 5 different things going on at the same time. That's a lot to calculate, and that's why doing that more times will help the system. But at the same time, I had to tell this story because it's just too funny. My friend has the Model Y, has not subscribed to FSD at all.
Right.
It's too expensive and it's not working perfectly. Blah blah. Right, the same thing. And then Tesla sent out the trial version, and she uses autopilot, the basic one, but she didn't know what it was. And so her son's like, no, it's that new FSD. So they had to call me, and I was telling my friend, no, that's V12 FSD. And so he's like, oh, it's just driving itself. It's making turns on the city, streets by itself, and it made it back to her house. I'm like, that's exactly what I've been talking about. And then it was so funny because she's half joking and say, oh, I hate it because she doesn't have control of the car anymore, but it's just driving itself. So you're telling me it's driving itself and making turn on its own, and it's going back to her house, right? And she didn't know it was on V12, but it was oh, it's driving itself now, and she was surprised with it, right? So even people who have no clue what the hell it is, oh, it works, and her son knows better than the parent does. So I think that there is progress has been making when you have someone who has no idea what it is, and it's oh, it's just driving itself now, right? So I think that's a better testament to it because you're gonna have all these small cases. It's going to have to work itself out. Yeah, many more drives and left turns that has to be done. But on the other hand, my friend was I'm not subscribing to it. And yet when it's driving itself, she's shocked and it's unbelievable. So I think that's a litmus test when you have someone who's completely doubting it and they see the progress in it. So
yeah, it's definitely going to shock the people who don't know anything because it is a step change. It needs to improve a lot more, but what we have going for us is the releases are coming out much faster. You've had statements not only from Elon, but many of the AI employees, team members, them saying that they're no longer compute constrained. That means these things that we're pointing out, they're like, you've had Ashok Swami also saying that we're now the beginning of the end. Lots more to do. Progress is moving faster, and these things are no longer considered to be unsolvable. These are just identify them, like you said, train it, then give more data, and then I'll be able to solve these things. So it's good that we're finding these little interventions. James Dalma, well-known machine learning expert, very big on FSD. Elon follows him and make sure he agrees with a lot of what he says. He says that the more interventions that we do, who are FSD beta testers, that's how you train the system. So we should do more of that. Okay, so let's talk about Robotaxi. And the part about that you were saying that we need to understand is like compact car versus Robotaxi. And so one of the reasons why the stock has been falling is because they feel like the second growth wave, the compact car, people are misunderstanding this, misinterpreting it, especially the institutional investors, thinking that that's been delayed, that's been canceled. Therefore, we're all in on Robotaxi. We got a long way to go. Some people are saying Robotaxi revenues won't happen until 2030, which is 6 years from now. What's your thoughts about the compact car as it relates to the Robotaxi?
Well, personally, I think it's going to be the same platform. Tesla has never made a platform where it's only a single vehicle. So even for the Cybertruck one, if it's going to be a minivan or another SUV or whatever vehicle that they're going to make, they're going to make at least one other one, because it would not be efficient use of the platform if you only make one vehicle. They've always made at least two. So I just see in terms of historically what they've done effectively. So it's just another step. So they still have to make another vehicle for the Cybertruck one platform eventually. And then they're still working on the semi, and then they're working on the Robotaxi and compact car. And I think they're going to be the same platform. Yeah, they're not going to be the same vehicle, but the platform is going to be the same. So they're going to have shared parts or shared lines, basically. So you make it more efficient. So I don't think it's going to be like one or the other. And it's really easy to say that when one is announced officially first. But they can have a big enough team now to do two programs at the same time as well. I just don't think it's a versus thing. I just think, which one do you put first? Like, you have to choose one first. It doesn't mean that the other one is never going to be made, or it's going to be delayed to such a degree that it seems like it's going to be years out. Like, I don't think it's going to be that way, because the necessity is here.
Yeah, I agree with you. And then like you and Jeff Lutz and Alexandra have been pointing out that the unbox model allows them to create different kinds of vehicles. So even if they produce the unbox model, created a new factory for that, produce the Robotaxi version first, for them to then say, hey, I'm going to do the compact car. It's not like this, I want to wait 3 years. It's not like I need to redesign everything. That's the platform. They need to now just reconfigure slightly. Yeah, I totally agree. And the other thing about the Model 2 that people are forgetting, the compact car, is that because it's meant to be a lower price, they can't announce it too early. They need to and when they do announce it, they want to go volume in order to be able to sell it at the lower price. You know what I mean? So they need to keep it quiet and then only announce it when they're getting closer, right?
Sorry, I missed the last. Yeah, for 5-10 seconds.
Just the point about when they do announce a compact car, they won't do it like a year ahead like they did with the Cybertruck. It's going to be something that as soon as they do, they're going to be ready to sell it within 3 months. People are saying, because it's supposed to be volume sales.
Yeah, I believe that they're going to plan to do it faster. So that's the whole goal, getting better at the production. So, and that's been usually the case, especially the second vehicle that comes out on the platform is much quicker. Like the Model Y was much better run, and I think they're a little bit early in terms of their initial first production. So the Model 3 was hard because they're trying to do everything vertically, get the suppliers in line, getting the suppliers to actually believe them. Now that's not the issue.
Right.
So I just think that the unboxing, including that with the new platform, it's going to help. And then you're going to have a new factory in Giga, Mexico that's going to be from ground up already set for that. So you're not going to have to retool or shut down. Like, you're not going to have that. So I think the efficiency in building it out is going to already be baked into the planning of the factory plus the vehicle program. So I just think that it just becomes this patience thing is a bigger issue that I see. It's for me, it's like majority of the stock market is psychologically where people want more, but they can't wait for it, and that's what I see what's happening. Because I see the compact car. In my mind, seeing it in Europe and Asia, I don't see how a compact car is not going to be made. It's like perfect for those countries out there. The roads, like if you're only in the U.S., you have this warped part where you think SUV is the majority of the thing, and these compact cars don't matter. That's not true, because you can't have these big SUVs running in small streets, and the cost is too big. They don't need that kind of huge car or truck. It's a very different lifestyle. So I don't, like, every now and then it's like, oh, compact car is going to be delayed. It's going to be, or it's going to be canceled. It's no way. It's impossible. It's a perfect car that's out there. And I see my friends in the countryside too. Like, they have the small compact cars. When I looked around, it was only marginally bigger. So whatever they classify as slightly bigger than compact car, but from the U.S. standard, it's still a compact car. And I see that all over. So this point comes up every now and then, they're going to cancel, or it's not going to be big enough. It's like, no, you haven't been to the other countries, and you have to see the other countries where those cars make more sense, even on a physical level. Like in Japan, the Model Y is too big. It doesn't fit in majority of the elevators, the parking elevators. It doesn't fit it. So even if you have an SUV version of the compact car to have more space, you need a smaller vehicle to fit even in the parking spots. So it's very different when you go to different countries and you see their needs. And the way that they're set up is they also don't need a car that goes 500 miles. That's the other thing too, right? Yes, I would love to have a battery pack that does that at the current prices or cheaper, but you don't need to overkill that either. So there's a balance that has to happen when you're creating these new platforms and see the markets for it. So I just see the necessity for the Robotaxi and compact car at that size makes a lot of sense. And when Elon already mentioned often too, like most of the time it's a single person, so you're taking a car that could have capacity of 5 people, and you really only need it for 1, maybe 2 at a majority of the time. So I think rethinking the whole transportation part and how we go about doing it is more necessary. And it's harder to do it when you're only in one spot. And that goes the same and vice versa. If you're only in Asia, they're like, why do we need an SUV, right? So you have to be able to see what the global market is, what Tesla is trying to address. They're not trying to address only one market. And I think that's where we get lost in the details of some of these discussions that we have. But if you travel, you see the difference. I see more cars in Japan that are Teslas that I didn't see before. It was very rare that I saw one, and I think I almost saw one per day. So you see something different when you go. When I was in Italy, I saw one per day. When I was lucky to see one per week or 2 weeks. So you see progress by even just the number of vehicles that you see on the streets, and it's become more popular and people know it. So that difference, even the conscious part of people knowing the name of the vehicle, is already progress that you see. So I feel like there's sometimes you get too much in the haystack and then you forget about the bigger picture.
Yeah. Great points. I hadn't thought about a lot of things you just said now. Fantastic. I hadn't heard anybody say these things. This is good. Tell me about Robotaxi and your thoughts about that in Japan. You had some sort of realization there? Or?
Yeah, the background picture is from the cherry blossom that I went and saw, and I know there's always regulations. That's going to be another set of procedures that you have to go through every country. But just the technology itself, like Kyoto is one of the biggest places for tourism, and I'm sure this is true for any city that's like huge hub for tourism. I looked it up. There are about 1.5 million residents in Kyoto. You get an average of between 3 to 4 million tourists per month. Mm-hmm. So you get a triple amount of population in that small area. And it was never meant to, obviously, 1,000 years ago, it was never meant to have that kind of capacity of people. influx going in and out. And so this crazy amount of people are there. I look at it at the streets, and there's like 100 people waiting for the bus stop.
Yeah.
I've never seen that many people wait for a bus stop. And then I took a taxi, and then I was talking to the taxi driver, and he was in a smaller, more independent company, I guess, and it has 30 cars, but they only have 20 drivers. So you literally have 10 cars just sitting there doing nothing. I tried to get, reserve a all day, taxi, just get a taxi for the whole day. I couldn't. There was none. And it wasn't because there was a lack of cars. When I was talking to a taxi driver, he said, there's no drivers. And the thing is, he said it takes 6 months to become a proficient driver because there's so many small streets. You have to figure a way to get around the traffic. So it takes you 6 months to memorize basically the map of the layout of the city to train for the driver. So they don't have enough drivers. So if you can imagine deploying robotaxis there, even in short distances, that would alleviate so many things because there's literally not enough drivers to move the people. So it's not even about like if you just pay more, you can't. There's not enough taxis. And another driver I talked to, he's his shift was supposed to end at 5 p.m. and he said often it goes over. Like the other day was like he ended up at 8 p.m. because the second he drops someone off, there's someone else who gets on. And he's not gonna say no to the business. So he ends up doing 3 hours over his shift. Of course, they make more money, but it's like the fact that demand is like he can't even get off the shift because another person is literally waiting the second he drops up the next person. And they don't have enough people. They don't have enough buses. Like you could only make so much because of the fact that they can't train enough people, and not enough people are wanting to becoming drivers. So you have this deficiency in these highly densely places where tourists go. And this influx is not built for that city. And it happens to my friend's place in Italy in the countryside. They have a concert. They have a major, even American music artist, European music artist goes there. Their population triples, quadruples that week, and they can't handle it. And it's not just because they don't have enough vehicles. It's like you can't have drivers that's like come out for just 1 week. And if you have robotaxi that can go in and out and then sit further out where it doesn't make traffic jams, then it would even help more. And that's the part where it's not even about just having drivers and cars. It's the fact that because there's not enough taxi drivers, there's not enough buses for the transportation, people rent cars and then they go into the town, into Kyoto, and that adds to the traffic because they're like, oh, I can't have reliable transport. I'm going to go rent a car now. So you add more traffic where that car wouldn't have been there because that person wouldn't be a new resident. So if you have a robotaxi and you could say, oh, there's enough robotaxis, you wouldn't bring a car in. So that alleviates more of the traffic. That's the way I see it theoretically. Yeah. So the demand for robotaxis, even in certain segments, is very important. And there's so many different cases you could start out with that's smaller, safer places, more remote or certain sections or routes. But I know for that town, it's really relatively small. It has small streets and so forth. If you have robotaxis on certain sites of it, even now, it would be way better. And even the metro, there's a metro, but it only goes to certain sections. It wasn't built the way that it is, it's built off of what it was structured 500, 600 years ago. So you can't just destroy everything either to make the metro and so forth. So there's a limitation in what that area has. It's surrounded by mountains and so forth. So it's different from Tokyo, where you have 6 different metros and trains, and you have buses and taxis, like way bigger, and you have bigger systems for it. But in Kyoto, you don't have that, and you have this concentration of people. So I see robotaxi to be a necessity. There's places you could deploy it now, as long as it could drive those streets, even on a limited basis. I see a demand for it today without taking anybody's job. Like no job would be lost.
Right. What you just said makes a lot of sense, which is that people are so concerned about regulation, but the fact is there's going to be many cities, including this one as an example, many of them is going to be like jumping ahead and going, I want to be first. So it's not like nobody wants it, and that there'll be some that are asking for it. And then if you carry this forward, somebody pointed this out, the first year that Tesla is able to make robotaxi vehicles, this is above and beyond just regular cars. Can already be it. They can, let's say they make 100,000 that first year, right? That's equivalent to 500,000 Model 3s and Model Ys. And so, Chicago, James Dalma did this research of how many Ubers is needed to service a city like Chicago is 100,000. So all you needed for that first year is one city to say, I'm ready to go. Now, the next year, let's say they make 500,000 Robotaxis. That's already equivalent to 2.5 million Model 3s, Model Ys, which is already more than what we're able to produce this year. Because each Robotaxi will generate that much money. It'll be used 5 times more of continued use. So you only need 5 cities on that second year to say, I'm ready to go. You know what I mean? Like I believe the regulation is going to be an issue, but it'll be actually not the rate limiting step. The rate limit step will be how many cars can Tesla produce. That, and then there will be cities, it depends. Obviously, it's going to be US first. So that might be a different scenario versus, going global at this point. But there will be cities that are vying for first. And you'll be fine for 2 to 3 years.
I mean, Las Vegas is doing the boring company. So
they'll put their hands up right away. Yep.
Because I've been to convention centers there. The traffic is like gridlock. It's literally a parking lot.
It's what you just said. Yeah. It's everything you just described. So, okay, fantastic. Thank you so much, Sat. You explained a little bit at the beginning about the difference between the business progress and the stock. You've been there before. You're seeing the same signs. We talked about the importance of FSD progress. Now we're talking about the Robotaxi. And thank you for sharing a lot of the information I hadn't heard before. Follow Sat on X at SA_futurist, SA_futurist on X. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Sat. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.